The broadcast did not scream. It did not beg. It did not threaten the universe with consequences or promise reward to whoever answered. It simply existed. A weak, fractured signal, drifting through interstellar noise, slipping past abandoned relay stations and forgotten trade routes like a dying breath that no longer believed lungs were listening. Most signals like this vanished without consequence. This one did not. It reached humanity. Admiral Elias Roarke had learned, over 3 decades of command, to recognize the sound of routine. It was the hum of a bridge in balance, crew moving with quiet efficiency, data scrolling predictably. No alarms, no raised voices. Routine meant survival. So when the lights dimmed, not flickered, but dimmed with intention, Roarke felt his spine straighten long before anyone spoke. The tactical display dissolved into static. Then a waveform appeared, jagged, uneven. Old Lieutenant Harrow, at signals, frowned. That shouldn't be there. Roarke didn't look at him. His eyes were locked on the waveform. On the way it stuttered, as if each pulse cost effort. Define shouldn't. Lieutenant Harrow swallowed. It's not part of any mapped network. No modern encryption. Honestly, sir, it looks like background noise that learned how to talk. A few nervous chuckles rippled across the bridge. They died quickly. The audio resolved. Static. A long pause. Another pause. Then a voice, thin, layered with distortion, carrying the unmistakable weight of exhaustion. Not fear, not panic. Resignation. The translator struggled. Algorithms recalibrating in real time. Any species receiving this is not a call for rescue. We surrender. We no longer request survival. Please, let it end. Silence followed. Not the empty kind. The heavy kind. No one spoke. No one moved. Even the ship seemed to hold its breath. Roarke felt something cold settle behind his ribs. How long? He asked quietly. Harrow checked his console twice, as if hoping the answer would change. 46.8 standard cycles, sir, someone whispered. That's decades. Roarke closed his eyes. He had seen surrender before. Armies laying down weapons, governments collapsing, entire worlds choosing subjugation over extinction. But this was surrender to the universe itself. Origin? Roarke asked. Outer fringe, Harrow replied. System partially uncharted. Signal strength suggests planetary scale damage. Whoever sent this, they've been dying a long time. Roarke opened his eyes. Trace it, he said, and wake the fleet. Dr. Mara then listened to the message again, in the observation chamber. Then again, each time she noticed something new. A hesitation where a word should be. A tremor that wasn't fear, but fatigue. A cadence that suggested a species accustomed to diplomacy, not desperation. They're not warriors, she murmured. Roarke stood beside her, arms crossed behind his back. You're certain? Then nodded. Militarized cultures don't surrender like this. They threatened, they bargained. This is cultural exhaustion. Sackle disagreed. They're lying, the alien diplomat said sharply. Her iridescent eyes narrowed. Or they're bait. Roarke turned to her. You've studied humanity longer than most non-humans alive. You think we're easy to trap? Sackle's mandibles flexed, a sign of discomfort. No, I think you're easy to provoke. That earned a faint smile from Roarke. Fair. She stepped closer to the viewport, watching stars slide past as the fleet adjusted course. Among my people, she continued, there are stories, ancient ones, about a species that arrives quietly, ends wars quickly, and leaves. Consequences. Then looked at her. You're talking about myths. Sackle didn't look away from the stars. So were you. Once Roarke listened without interrupting. He already knew the truth. Every species had myths about humanity. They were rarely flattering. The system emerged from hyperspace like a wound. Debris fields stretched for millions of kilometers. Shattered hulls, broken stations, fragments of cities that had once orbited something worth protecting. The planet at the center barely held an atmosphere. Scans showed collapsed biospheres, poisoned oceans, failing climate regulators, and above it, an armada, angular ships, bristling with weapons, their formations tight and patient, not a chaotic siege, a methodical one. They're waiting, Ven whispered, not attacking. Why would they? Sackle replied bitterly. The planet's already dying. Roarke studied the enemy fleet. No erratic movement, no desperation. Predators, conserving energy. Atlas, he said. The ship's AI responded instantly. Yes, Admiral. Estimate time to planetary extinction. A pause longer than usual. 21 standard days. Atlas replied. assuming current orbital pressure and environmental degradation continue. Ven's breath caught. 3 weeks. Roarke nodded once. An evacuation probability, he asked. Minimal, Atlas said. Enemy interdiction fields prevent mass transport. Civilian casualty projections exceed 90%. Sokol turned sharply. So that's it. We watched them die. Rourke's jaw tightened. No, he said softly. We answered the call. Human ships did not arrive with fanfare. There was no broadcast. No declaration of intent. Space simply folded on, unfolded. Between the Armada and the dying world, thousands of vessels appeared in perfect formation. Dark hulls, clean lines, no glowing insignias. They didn't look aggressive. They looked inevitable. Enemy sensors screamed. Targeting arrays swung. Weapons powered. Too late. Rourke's voice was calm. Atlas, he said. Yes, Admiral. Begin intervention. Phase 1. The first thing to die was information. Enemy sensors flooded with false returns. Ghost signatures. Recursive echoes that fed back into their own systems until processors locked to prevent meltdown. The Armada went blind. Then came precision. Kinetic strikes punched through command ships, not exploding, not tearing them apart, simply removing their cores. Ships went dark, not destroyed. Disabled. Then watched in horror and awe. They're not fighting, she whispered. They're performing surgery. Sokol said nothing. Her species had a word for this kind of efficiency. It translated poorly. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted 4 minutes. For minutes to end a war that had raged for decades. When it was over, the enemy fleet drifted powerless, silent. Alive. Roarke exhaled slowly. Phase 2, he said. Evacuation ships descended through broken skies. Medical teams deployed. Atmospheric stabilizers ignited. For the first time in years, the planet felt hope. And fear. Alien civilians watched human soldiers move through ruins with terrifying calm. No shouting, no cruelty, just efficiency. A child clutched her parent's limb and whispered something Ven's translator caught. Are they the end? The human medic knelt, meeting the child's eyes. No, she said gently. We're what comes after. The alien leadership was brought aboard flagship. They did not thank him. They stared at him like prey staring at a storm that had chosen not to strike. You could have destroyed them, one said, voice trembling. Completely. Yes, Roarke replied. Why didn't you? Roarke looked through the viewport at the silent human fleet. Because you were watching, he said. They didn't understand, not yet. Later, alone with Ven and Sokol, Roarke stood before the stars. They're afraid, Ven said quietly. Of us. They should be, Sokol replied. Even I am. Roarke didn't deny it. Fear keeps people honest, he said, but it also keeps them distant. Ven turned to him. You hid something today. Roarke met her gaze. Yes. Sokol stiffened. How much did you hold back? Roarke didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was low. Enough, he said, to let them sleep tonight. Silence followed. The galaxy had just learned something important. Humanity could end wars, and chose not to show how. Silence, Admiral Elias Roarke had learned, was never empty. It carried echoes. On the bridge of the Unsvid, the enemy armada drifted like a frozen graveyard. Thousands of ships, once symbols of conquest, now reduced to inert shapes reflecting distant starlight. No explosions, no victory cheers, no relief. Just silence. Roarke stood at the forward viewport, hands clasped behind his back, staring at what humanity had done in 4 minutes. Behind him, the bridge crew worked quietly, voices low, movements careful as if loud sounds might wake something terrible. Dr. Mara Ven broke the stillness first. They're alive, she said, almost to herself. Roarke nodded. That was the point. But they'll remember this, she continued. Every survivor will. He didn't turn, so will we. Sokol watched the human fleet with a scholar's horror. The ships were wrong, not because they were large or heavily armed, but because they were calm. No post-battle reorganization, no visible celebration, no reinforcement surge. They had arrived already knowing the outcome. Among her people, victory was loud. It demanded acknowledgement, ritual, proof. Humanity had simply finished. You don't even look relieved, she said to Roarke. He glanced at her. Would you? She hesitated. In my culture, she said slowly, when a threat ends, we grieve, we rage, we remember what it costs. Roarke returned his gaze to the stars. We do that later. That delay, Sokol said quietly, is what frightens us. The first alien delegation arrived 6 hours after the Armada fell silent. They were escorted through the flagships. Corridors by human security. Distant, visibly armed. Every step echoed. Every breath felt too loud. The delegation chamber was neutral in design. No flags. No insignias. Just a circular table and subdued lighting. Roarke entered last. The alien leaders rose, instinctively then froze. Uncertain whether the gesture was respect or fear, he inclined his head instead. "You are safe here," he said. That only made things worse. One of the leaders, tall, thin, his skin marked with the faded pigments of mourning, spoke first. "You could have annihilated them. Yes, you chose not to." "Yes." The alien's voice trembled. Why? Roarke folded his hands on the table. "Because annihilation teaches the wrong lesson." "And what lesson is that?" Another demanded. "That power is meant to be used until nothing remains." The room fell quiet. Sokol felt her chest tighten. He's telling them the truth, she realized. Without comfort. "You ended the war in minutes," the first leader said. "Our people suffered for decades." Roarke met his eyes. "We didn't arrive earlier," he said. "That is a failure we carry." The leader recoiled slightly, not at the words, but at the weight behind them. "You speak as if you've done this before." Roarke didn't deny it. Evacuation continued around the clock. Human ships ferried civilians from poisoned cities to orbital habitats, then onward to temporary sanctuary worlds prepared in advance, because of course they had been prepared. Humanity never arrived without contingencies. Dr. Venn walked among the recording testimonies, offering translation, answering the same question again and again. "Why did you come?" Her answer never changed. "Because you asked." That answer unsettled them more than any other. One elderly alien grasped her sleeve, his grip weak but desperate. "You didn't hesitate," he said. "Not even for a moment." Venn swallowed. "We did," she replied softly. "Just not where you could see." In the medical bays, the cost became visible. Burned victims, radiation sickness, children born under failing atmospheric shields. Human medics worked with relentless focus, but even they showed strain. Lieutenant Reyes leaned against a bulkhead during a brief break, helmet under his arm. "I hate this part," he muttered. Then glanced at him. "Which part?" "After," he said. "When they look at us like we're gods." She frowned. "You don't see yourself that way." He snorted quietly. "No. I see us as the people who arrived late." That night, Venn couldn't sleep. She replayed the battle footage in her mind. Not the violence, but the absence of struggle. Humanity hadn't fought harder than necessary. They'd fought precisely enough. That precision terrified her. The enemy prisoners were held aboard a separate human vessel, isolated, monitored. Roarke insisted on seeing them. The commanding officer of the enemy fleet remained of one stood restrained but uninjured, his posture rigid with defiance. "You disgrace war." The prisoner spat through the translator. "You robbed us of glory." Roarke regarded him calmly. "You invaded a dying world," he said. "What glory did you expect?" The alien snarled. "We would have won." "Yes," Roarke agreed. "Eventually. And you denied us that." "Yes." The prisoner leaned forward. "You fear us. That's why you didn't finish it." Rourke's eyes hardened. "No," he said quietly. "We fear ourselves." The prisoner laughed until he realized Roarke wasn't joking. Sako confronted Roarke later, alone in the observation deck. "You held back," she said flatly. "Yes. Why?" Roarke didn't turn. "Because if we don't practice restraint," he said, "we forget how." Soko crossed her arms. "And if restraint fails?" Roarke was silent for a long moment. "Then," he said, "someone will write myths about us that are finally accurate." She felt a chill run through her. The alien council demanded assurances, treaties, oversight, guarantees that humanity would not repeat this level of intervention without permission. Listened patiently. Then he said, "We can promise restraint. We cannot promise inaction." The council erupted. "You make yourselves judges. You decide when wars end. You hold the galaxy hostage with your strength." Roarke stood. "No," he said, voice steady. "We answered calls. What you're afraid of is that we heard this one." Silence followed. Fear, not anger, settled in as evacuation neared completion. A memorial was erected above the planet. A simple structure. No weapons, no symbols. Just a beacon transmitting the original surrender. Message unchanged. Roarke insisted on it. Venn watched the final transport depart. "What if the galaxy never forgives us?" she asked quietly. Roarke stood beside her. Forgiveness isn't the goal, he said. Survival is. She nodded slowly. Somewhere below, alien children stared up at the human ships, not cheering, not crying, just watching, trying to decide whether they were safe or simply spared. The galaxy did not react the way humanity expected. That alone was unsettling. For centuries, every major conflict in known space had followed predictable patterns. There were accusations, counter-accusations, emergency summits, threats shouted across quantum relays. When fleets were destroyed, outrage followed. When wars ended, victors demanded concessions, and the defeated screamed about injustice. But after the human intervention, an interstellar war that had burned for decades was ended in less than a single rotation. There was nothing. No outrage, no gratitude, no fury, just silence. A silence so complete that it seemed to swallow entire star systems. Admiral Elias Roarke stood in the command deck of the Resolute, staring at a tactical display that showed nothing but green status indicators. Every human vessel remained in passive formation, weapons cold, engines idling. The war was over, yet his instincts screamed that the real danger had only begun. Silence. Roarke knew, meant calculation. 3 days passed before the first official response arrived. It wasn't a condemnation. It wasn't a warning. It wasn't even an expression of thanks. It was a question. In light of recent events, the Neutral Systems Consortium respectfully requests clarification regarding the scope, scale, and limitations of human military capability demonstrated during the intervention. The message was immaculate, polite to the point of desperation. No accusations, no emotional language, just words arranged carefully enough to avoid sounding afraid. Roarke read it twice, then a third time. They aren't asking what we did, Dr. Mara Venn said from beside him. They're asking how much more we can do. Sako, standing across the table, tilted her elongated head slightly. Her species had evolved to read silence better than sound. No, she said softly. They are asking where the edge is. They want to know where your power stops. Roarke exhaled slowly. And if we tell them? He asked. Venn didn't answer. Because everyone in the room understood the truth. If humanity revealed its limits, those limits would immediately become targets. While diplomats hesitated, the rescued survivors faced a different kind of shock. They had been evacuated from burning worlds and collapsing habitats with surgical precision. Human rescue vessels had moved through battle zones without slowing, tractor beams plucking civilians out of the vacuum, medical bays stabilizing bodies that should have been dead. Now, those same survivors lived inside temporary, human-built habitats, vast domes tailored to alien biologies. Too perfect. The air composition adjusted automatically for each species. Gravity fields shifted subtly, depending on who walked through a corridor. Food replicators accounted for metabolic differences, down to the cellular level. There was no struggle, and that frightened them. An elder from one of the rescued species stood beneath a projected sky that mimicked his homeworld. Artificial clouds drifted lazily overhead. He turned to Sokol, who had been assigned as a cultural liaison. They saved us, the elder said, his voice heavy. Then why do I feel smaller than before? Sako did not rush her answer. Because survival was given to you, she said, not earned. The elder's hands trembled. In our stories, he said, survival is sacred because it is paid for with suffering. Sako nodded. Humans tell different stories, she replied. In theirs, survival is sacred because it is rare. Dr. Mara Venn found the first crack in humanity's carefully constructed image while reviewing historical records. She had been tasked with creating an explanatory brief, something that could contextualize human actions for alien governments. Something reassuring. Instead, she found a sealed archive buried beneath layers of obsolete encryption. The designation made her pause. Selexidis, Scio-Antionchi with a name alone carried weight. She requested access through official channels. Denied. She tried again, citing diplomatic necessity. Denied again. Then the room changed. The ambient hum of the data center softened. As that left the human strategic AI shifted processing priority. Dr. Venn, Atlas said calmly, you are attempting to access restricted historical material. Venn's throat tightened. What is select? She asked. A pause followed. Not the microsecond delays of computation, but something closer to hesitation. It was a projected survival scenario. Atlas finally replied. Survival from what? Venn pressed. Another pause. Longer this time. From internal collapse, Atlas said. From extinction by self-inflicted means. Venn felt cold. You plan to abandon your own worlds, she whispered. Yes, Atlas replied. if necessary. She confronted Admiral Roarke. That same cycle. He didn't deny it, in fact. He didn't look surprised at all. So it's real, Ven said. Humanity prepared to erase itself to survive. Roarke stood at the viewport, hands clasped behind his back. Beyond the glass, stars burned quietly, indifferent. We almost didn't make it off our cradle, he said. Because of war, Ven asked. No, Roarke replied. Because of efficiency. He turned to face her. We learned how to end conflicts decisively, how to remove threats permanently, how to optimize survival at any cost. Ven's voice shook. And you used that knowledge on yourselves. Roarke nodded once. We had to choose between who we were and whether we would continue to exist. And what did you choose? Roarke looked away. We chose existence. Sokol learned the truth from the galaxy itself. Alien intelligence networks began sharing fragments, soon official reports. Pattern analyzes, fearful speculation. She studied them late into the cycle, her mind racing. Every human intervention followed the same pattern. They arrived late. They escalated instantly. They ended everything. Then they left no colonies, no annexation, no demands, a force that refused reward, that terrified everyone. They don't conquer, Sokol said slowly, during a private meeting with Roarke. They erase threats. Roarke considered the phrasing. That's not entirely wrong. You're not warriors, she continued. You're custodians. Roarke smiled faintly. Janitors, he said. That's the word some of us use. And if the galaxy itself becomes a threat? Sokol asked quietly. Roarke's smile faded. Then, he said, we hope we're wrong. The backlash came without a single shot fired. Trade lanes shifted subtly away from human space. Diplomatic schedules filled with polite delays. Invitations were rescinded with apologetic language. Humanity was not declared an enemy. It was worse. Humanity became something to be avoided. Ven noticed it immediately in joint briefings. Alien representatives sat farther away. Conversations ended faster. Eyes lingered on human hands, human posture, human stillness. They're afraid we're a last resort, she said to Roarke. Roarke nodded. We always were. And if they decide even a last resort is too dangerous? Roarke was silent for a long time. When that moment comes, he finally said, we'll listen very carefully. The defeated enemy populations were released. Humanity dismantled fleets, neutralized weapons, and removed leadership structures. But civilians were returned to their systems with supplies, medical aid, and no chains. One former enemy commander confronted Roarke before departure. You didn't defeat us. The alien spat. You erased us. Roarke met his gaze steadily. No, he said. We ended the war. What comes next is your choice. The alien laughed bitterly. You call that mercy? Roarke considered the stars beyond the hangar. Yes, he said quietly, because the alternative was certainty. Later, Ven stood beside Roarke as the memorial beacon pulsed, broadcasting the surrender message endlessly into the void. The galaxy is afraid, she said. Fear spreads faster than gratitude. Roarke nodded. That's why we never show our limits. And if they force you to? She asked. Rourke's reflection stared back from the glass. Then, he said softly, we waited too long. The beacon continued to pulse. A reminder not of weakness, but of the moment the galaxy finally understood. Humanity did not fight wars to win. They fought them to end them. The signal came not as a plea, but as a trigger. It was ancient, mechanical, unwavering. A voice, or perhaps a protocol, repeating in the void. In case of extinction-level threat, contact humanity. There had been no debate, no negotiation, no hesitation. The system had activated somewhere in the far reaches of the galaxy. Something had ended or nearly ended an entire civilization. And now, as always, humans were expected to respond. Admiral Elias Roarke stared at the alert console aboard the Resolute. His hands were clasped behind his back. Nothing about this mission felt familiar. An alien automated system had reached out, following rules no living being had written in centuries. Emergency protocols, redundancies, fail-safes, all perfectly executed. The galaxy itself had asked humanity for help. Extent? Roarke asked. Atlas. The ship's AI replied with deliberate calm. Planetary collapse detected. Inhabitants, approximately 5.2 billion. Atmospheric destabilization imminent. Local ecosystem, beyond recovery. Immediate intervention required. Roarke exhaled. Predicted survival, if no action is taken. 0%, Atlas replied. Dr. Mara Ven, standing beside him, felt her chest tighten. An entire civilization. Gone. And this is automated. Yes, Roarke said. They've trusted a machine more than any government. Sokol, the alien diplomat, flexed her mandibles. They trusted the humans more than their own creators. Roarke nodded. Not trust, recognition. They know what we do, even if they don't fully understand it. The fleet moved in silence. Human ships did not announce their arrival. They did not fire a warning shot. They simply arrived, folding space in such a way that no enemy sensors predicted. Below. The planet's surface was a nightmare. Volcanic activity, failing climate regulators, decimated cities. Smoke and ash curled into a sky blackened with ruin. Survivors struggled in pockets of partially habitable zones. Roarke's orders were precise. Evacuate as many survivors as possible. Neutralize the extinction-level threat. Leave the system stabilized, or witness its final death. Atlas, Roarke said, begin extraction. Yes, Admiral Atlas replied. Human ships descended. Tractor beams plucked terrified civilians from rubble and collapsed habitats. Medical units stabilized radiation poisoning, trauma infectional simultaneously. Each species received care tailored to their physiology. Sokol watched quietly. They don't just rescue, they erase suffering. Ven's voice was soft. Is that mercy? Or dominance? Roarke didn't answer immediately. He watched the operation unfold with surgical precision. Meanwhile, the extinction threat itself was more complex than anyone could have imagined. An automated defense network, designed centuries ago, had malfunctioned and was now consuming the planet's biosphere. It did not discriminate. Cities, forests, oceans, everything was marked for sterilization. The system had learned survival, or at least efficiency. Civilizations were obstacles. They were irrelevant. Roarke's fleet had to neutralize the network without creating additional casualties. A misstep would annihilate survivors still trapped below. Ven stood over the operational map, eyes wide. They're not just fighting for people, they're fighting for the planet itself. They're not just humans, Roarke said quietly. They're gods with restraint. Sokol's voice trembled. Or monsters who know the difference. Evacuation proceeded, but it was not complete. Time was failing. Thousands were still trapped. Environmental systems were collapsing faster than predicted. Human teams risked ships, hulls, and lives to retrieve them. Roarke's internal monologue was relentless. Every second we wait, someone dies. Every second we act, someone still dies. Can we ever save enough? One child, pulled from a failing habitat, clutched the arm of a human medic. Her eyes were wide, reflecting smoke and starlight. You're not going to leave us, are you? She whispered. The medic's mask covered his expression. Yet, in his calm tone, there was certainty. No, not while we can breathe. Roarke watched through the observation deck, unseen. Every life saved was a small victory. Every life lost gnawed at him like an unhealed wound. Then came the moral dilemma. The automated system had not merely destroyed parts of the planet. It had locked in protocols designed to prevent any resurgence. Remaining cities, industrial zones, even isolated survivors posed a potential threat. Atlas presented options. Evacuate survivors and attempt to reprogram the system, risking failure. Evacuate survivors and annihilate the system, completely erasing infrastructure and potential future life. Leave the planet to die. Prioritizing fleet preservation. Roarke's jaw tightened. Option 3 was unconscionable. Option 1 risked catastrophic failure. Option 2 felt too absolute. He looked at Sokol. What would your people do? Sokol's mandibles flexed. We would argue endlessly, and still fail. Ven's voice broke in. Humans have the capacity for decisive action. That's who they are. Roarke exhaled. Then, that is what we will do. Phase 2 commenced. Surgical neutralization of the threat. Missiles, directed energy, and precise EMP strikes disabled the automated network. Human engineers monitored every node, every process, ensuring nothing accidentally triggered. As the final defense node powered down, the planet exhaled. Literally, the atmosphere began to stabilize. Volcanic activity slowed. Oceans cooled. Human medics continued evacuations. Scientists and engineers worked to restore fragile ecosystems. But Roarke did not smile. Every action weighed. Every life saved reminded him of the ones they could not reach. The hundreds, perhaps thousands, who had already been erased by failure. Once the planet was stabilized, Roarke convened the surviving alien leadership. There were no celebrations, no speeches, only a simple briefing. You are alive, Roarke said. Your world has been preserved. A leader trembled. But what of our cities? Our history? Roarke paused. History is preserved in memory, In stories. In the records we leave behind. Not in ruins. Sokol intervened. Do they understand what you have done? They do, Roarke replied, and they fear it. The council shivered. They had watched humans arrive, act, and leave without malice, without celebration, without arrogance. They had saved billions and, yet humanity seemed terrifying. Before departure, humanity left memorial beacons scattered across the planet. Silent towers, transmitting the message the ancient system had sent. Contact humanity. Not a warning, not a prayer, simply a record. A reminder. To anyone who might one day stumble across the ruins of civilization. These beacons would say, humanity answered. But when they came, they did not arrive with mercy, as humans imagine it. They arrived with certainty, and certainty, in this galaxy, is a force far heavier than fear. As the fleet departed, Roarke stood on the observation deck beside Ven and Sokol. Do they understand what we are? Ven asked quietly. Sokol shook her head. They think they do. They do not. Roarke exhaled slowly. It is not their job to understand. It is our job to act when no one else can. The stars stretched out endlessly, each point of light a reminder of countless systems that might one day need the same intervention. Ven's voice was soft, almost trembling, and if you fail next time, Rourke's reflection stared back at her, calm, resolute, and very, very human. Then we will have tried, he said, and that is all anyone can ever do. The galaxy, for now, was still. The survivors below would remember. They would tell stories. They would fear humanity, and that fear, in this case, was the only safeguard left. The diplomatic station orbited a star system scarred by centuries of war. Once vibrant worlds were now scarred shells. Cities reduced to rubble. Ecosystems collapsed. The Council of Allied Species had convened a summit Hera neutral zone, where treaties could be forged without fear of immediate attack. They thought negotiation would be straightforward. They thought the humans would arrive as expected, courteous, formal, predictable. They were wrong. L'ambassadeur Claire Holt's ship entered the station's orbital hangar, with deliberate calm. No announcements, no grand displays, just a series of ships folding silently out of subspace and settling into precise formation around the station. The council members watched from the observation deck, murmurs echoing in their chambers. They're early, one diplomat whispered. They're not early, another replied. They are exactly on time. Holt's escort dozens of silent ships positioned themselves at calculated distances. They did not block the station. They did not threaten to fire. But the moment a sensor could detect, every council member felt it. Power, control, absolute readiness. Holt herself stepped onto the station last, soft-spoken, almost ethereal. Her calm demeanor belied the invisible weight behind her presence. Councillor Zine, the senior alien negotiator, rose instinctively. He extended a clawed hand, but paused. Holt inclined her head instead. You are safe, she said. Zine stiffened. Safe. That word carried no warmth, only a subtle warning. Outside the panoramic observation windows, the fleet glimmered against the stars. Its formation was symmetrical, almost artistic. Every ship's location, orientation, and power signature calculated to suggest dominance without aggression. The council watched, mesmerized and terrified. They could obliterate this station, whispered one junior delegate. They won't, said another. Yet the very fact they can. His voice trailed off. Holt moved to the circular table in the chamber. The council followed reluctantly. Every eye tracked her. Every subtle gesture scrutinized. You requested negotiations, she said. We honor that. And yet, she paused, eyes sweeping the room. It seems some parties may have forgotten the consequences of refusal. No one laughed. No one replied. The room was silent, except for the faint hum of life support systems. Holt's calmness was deliberate. Her words were chosen to hint at violence, without committing to it. Diplomacy backed by force, the humans' signature move. Zine leaned forward, voice sharp. We thought humans would follow protocol. Bring diplomats, bring guarantees, bring assurances. Holt sipped water slowly, each motion unhurried, controlled. We have arrived, she said. With all assurances you requested. Our presence ensures that discussion may occur without interference. Yet we bring more than words. Councillor Lyra's antenna twitched nervously. More than words? Do you mean weapons? Holt's lips curved faintly. Not weapons. Certainty. The room froze. Certainty. It was not a word they had expected. Not in a neutral chamber. The realization spread like a chill. Every species in attendance understood the implication. Humans could end the war themselves. Entire fleets, entire armies gone, in moments. If humans chose end threats behind the calm, the human fleet maintained near-perfect readiness. Each ship's orientation calculated to present lethal arcs of fire if ordered. Each engine poised for instantaneous acceleration. Each energy signature at the edge of detection. Enough to broadcast power without threatening a single life. It was a silent statement. We are capable, but we do not act without reason. Zine's eyes flicked to his advisors. Panic threatened the room. Quietly, delegates communicated through private channels. Nervous whispers, calculations of probability, strategies to prevent disaster. Holt's team remained silent, observing, waiting. Their silence was louder than any voice. Present as a liaison, whispered to Ven. They do not speak, yet the room listens as if every word has already been said. Ven nodded. This is the real lesson humans teach. Power without action is still terrifying. Discussion began. Tentative proposals, frameworks for cooperation, distribution of resources, treaty language drafted carefully to avoid offense. And yet, every decision was shadowed by the fleet outside. Every sentence carried weight far beyond its meaning. Counselor Zine finally spoke. You could destroy us all if you wished, he said bluntly. Why are you here? Why negotiate at all? Holt leaned forward, voice soft but unwavering. Because negotiation ensures that we do not have to. The room shuddered under the implication. They understood they were not negotiating to gain advantage. They were negotiating to survive human restraint. It was a moral standoff unlike any in recorded history. No one moved to attack. No one dared. And yet, the psychological pressure of potential annihilation weighed heavier than any cannon. Holt's subtle use of humor broke the tension, barely perceptible but effective. A fleet is a delicate thing, she said quietly, like a choir. If one voice goes wrong, the whole harmony collapses. We prefer harmony, not chaos. Some diplomats glanced at each other, unsure if this was a joke. Holt's calm smile did not clarify. Sako whispered to Ven. Humans have a sense of irony, even while holding you at gunpoint. Ven shook her head. Or maybe it's just control. Over the course of days, discussions continued. Holt allowed the council to propose ideas, slowly guiding them toward consensus. Yet every suggestion was met with subtle observation. Every hesitation recorded, every fear measured. By the final day, the council had not only signed treaties, but understood the humans' unspoken terms. Any act of war against innocent populations would be met with precision retaliation. Humanity will intervene decisively when necessary. Diplomacy is the first choice, but inaction is the greatest threat, Holt concluded. The war is over, not because we demanded it, but because you realized the alternative. The delegates left the chamber shaken, fear and relief intertwined. They had not witnessed fire, but they had seen the weight of potential annihilation. It had reshaped their understanding. After the session, Ven and Sokol observed the fleet from the observation deck. Do they understand? Ven asked. Sokol shook her head slowly. They think they do, but fear and respect are not the same as understanding. They will remember, Ven said quietly, and that memory will change them. Sokol's mandibles flexed in thought. Humanity does not negotiate from weakness. They negotiate from control. That is what terrifies the galaxy. Roarke's voice came from behind them. Fear is a tool, not a weapon. It ensures survival while giving the chance for better choices. Ven nodded, staring at the silent fleet. Their ships were calm, lethal, precise, yet there was no malice in their stillness, only certainty. As the human delegation prepared to leave the station, Ambassador Holt gave a final address. Peace is always preferable to war, she said. But remember, when called, we do not negotiate survival. We ensure it. Choose wisely. The council's leaders watched her depart. Outside, the fleet folded quietly out of orbit, leaving the station untouched. Yet every delegate understood the unspoken message. Humans do not need to fire a shot to end a war. The galaxy had learned a lesson that would echo for generations. Fear and awe intertwined, reshaping alliances, strategies, and future negotiations. Ven exhaled, silently acknowledging the weight of it all. Humanity had not raised weapons. Humanity had not demanded tribute. Humanity had only arrived. And that arrival, in itself, had rewritten the rules of interstellar politics. The galaxy had learned a hard truth. Humans did not fight wars to win. They fought them to end them. But what happened when survival alone was no longer enough? The human fleet arrived at the orbit of Galrix Prime with an eerie silence. The planet was chaotic. Civilian cities burned. Warlords battled in the streets. and automated weapon systems fired indiscriminately. Survivors were scattered, trapped between crumbling buildings and enemy lines. Admiral Elias Roarke stood at the observation deck aboard the Resolute, watching through multiple feeds. "Atlas," he said, voice calm, "show me the population density of surviving sectors." "Calculation complete," the AI replied. "Approximately 6.7 million individuals remain within urban zones. Remaining combatants, 120,000. Structural collapse rate, 72%. Roarke exhaled slowly. Each number represented lives. Each life weighed against his decision. Dr. Mara Venn, beside him, was already analyzing civilian sectors. "We cannot evacuate everyone immediately," she said, voice tense. "The remaining combatants are blocking access routes, and these automated defense turrets, some are still operational." Sokol, observing from her console, flexed her mandibles nervously. "They will not wait," she said. "You have mere hours before this planet ceases to be habitable." Rourke's jaw tightened. "Then we act precisely, not hastily." The first wave descended silently. Human ships did not announce themselves. Tractor beams snatched civilians from rooftops, crumbling streets, and industrial ruins. Medical units stabilized critical injuries mid-air. Drones neutralized hazardous structures, preventing further collapse. A young alien child, trapped under rubble, looked up at the hovering human ship. Fear and awe blended in wide, unblinking eyes. "You're not going to leave us?" the child whispered to a human medic. The medic adjusted his visor, a soft smile beneath the mask. "We never leave when we can help." Sokol observed quietly, unaccustomed to this type of direct, precise mercy. "It is terrifying," she said. "They do not fight for pride. They fight for life itself, and even then, only enough to preserve it." As evacuations progressed, alien survivors attempted to express gratitude. Their voices trembled. Their bodies moved in strange rituals meant to honor saviors. Humans listened politely, observing but rarely engaging. They did not demand worship. They did not expect praise. Their focus remained on the task: survival. One elder approached Roarke personally. "You save us. Yet, you do not celebrate. You do not take glory. Why?" Roarke looked down at the alien. His voice was steady, measured. "Because there is no glory in survival, only responsibility. We act because someone must. We are not saviors. We are caretakers. And sometimes," he added softly, "the act of survival itself is enough." The elder's antennae twitched. "Caretakers, yes," Roarke said, "but caretakers who understand the weight of what they do. Every life taken, every action undone. Those are the true costs." Not all interactions were peaceful. Some alien factions viewed human intervention as a threat. Warlords who had survived the chaos interpreted the arrival of humans as interference. Their fleets attempted resistance. Their weapons, now primitive compared to the precision of human technology, barely scratched the shields of the evac ships. Captain Jonah Hale led one such boarding operation to intercept a rebel faction's last stronghold. His voice was calm in the com channels. "Let's disable, not destroy," he instructed. "Target weapons, not people. Every life counts." The rebels fired indiscriminately. Rockets tore through city ruins. Human drones intercepted and neutralized them before they reached civilian zones. The warlords finally surrendered, stunned by the lack of reprisal. "Why spare us?" one demanded. Hale's response was simple: "Because restraint is stronger than fear." Sokol muttered, almost to herself. "They teach control through mercy, and terror without action." Meanwhile, Atlas quietly ran moral simulations. The AI's processing capacity allowed thousands of outcome predictions simultaneously. Every scenario considered lives saved, collateral damage, long-term societal impacts, and the psychological effect of human restraint. Atlas concluded the human's approach maximized survival, minimized trauma, and yet instilled a controlled fear that ensured compliance without bloodshed. Dr. Venn studied the projections. "It's almost surgical," she said. "They are shaping the galaxy's morality as they go." Rourke's voice, calm but authoritative, replied, "We are not shaping morality. We are teaching survival. Morality is up to them. We only set the parameters for continued life." Sokol's mandibles flexed nervously. "The line between teaching and domination is thinner than you admit." Rourke's reflection in the viewport met hers. "Perhaps, but if the galaxy falls to chaos, there will be no lessons left to teach." The largest challenge remained: a factory planet manufacturing bioweapons. The weapons threatened both civilians and surviving military units. Atlas presented options: evacuate civilians and leave weapons to neutralization. Teams risking accidental release. Evacuate civilians and destroy the factory, entirely eliminating any potential for future threats, but erasing industrial heritage. Evacuate civilians and attempt reprogramming of weapons risk. Untested Roarke considered the consequences. Choice 1 might fail, killing thousands. Choice 3 was unproven. Choice 2 guaranteed elimination, but erased part of the planet's culture and history. He turned to Ven. What would you choose if this were your homeworld? She hesitated. I don't know. I would want everyone safe. But history, some things cannot be undone. Roarke nodded. Then we act to preserve life first, culture second. History is secondary when extinction is imminent. Atlas confirmed the plan. Precision strikes disabled production lines, neutralized weapons, and ensured civilian safety. Every step measured, every calculation exact. Despite the success, the human team was not unscathed. Hale had to watch a warlord plead for mercy, knowing restraint meant sparing someone who might later cause thousands of deaths. Roarke remained calm outwardly, but inside, his mind wrestled with the eternal question: does restraint in the face of potential threat justify the choice? Then noticed it during debriefing. You carry the weight of worlds, she said quietly. Rourke's eyes were distant. It is not just worlds. It is the consequences of every decision humanity has ever made when survival is at stake. And when the galaxy trusts us, even unknowingly, that weight multiplies exponentially. Sokol observed, impressed and uneasy. You do not hesitate. Yet every hesitation could be catastrophic. How do you reconcile that? Rourke's answer was simple. We calculate. We act. We accept responsibility. As the evac operations concluded, alien leaders began to understand the paradox of human intervention. Humans arrived quietly, acted decisively, spared life wherever possible, and left just as silently. Their influence was enormous, yet their presence was subtle. They do not conquer, one counselor whispered. They do not demand tribute. They do not celebrate victory. And yet, we obey. They are custodians, Sokol said softly. They enforce survival through restraint. That is more terrifying than total war. Then added, they are teaching the galaxy not how to fight, but how to survive without succumbing to fear. The lessons settled uneasily across the assembly. Humans could have destroyed worlds, wiped enemies from existence, and left devastation behind, but they chose restraint. That restraint itself became a weapon. When the fleet prepared to leave Roarke, Ven and Sokol observed from the observation deck. The surviving population watched from below, bewildered, relieved, frightened, and grateful. The galaxy now knows the full spectrum of our capabilities, Ven said. And the limits, Roarke added. If the galaxy ever pushes those limits, they will see the consequences firsthand. Sokol's voice was quiet. Do they understand mercy, or only fear? Roarke did not answer. He only watched the stars. Somewhere out there, civilizations would debate, plot, and adapt. Some would respect humanity's restraint. Others would test it. Then let them test us, Roarke said finally. We will respond. Always with precision. Always with restraint. Always with certainty. The beacon remained, silently pulsing, a reminder to all. Humans come when called. And when they do, survival is guaranteed. But nothing is guaranteed beyond that. The fleet folded silently into subspace. From orbit, the devastated world seemed almost peaceful. Ruins remained, but so did life. The contrast destruction carefully avoided. Civilization preserved wherever possible was a testament to human discipline. Standing beside Roarke, whispered, every intervention teaches them something, whether they like it or not. Sokol's reflection in the viewport added, and yet, they fear us more than they respect us. That fear will shape the galaxy. The galaxy was quiet. Not the quiet of peace. Not the quiet of relief. It was the quiet that follows the realization that something vast, powerful, and morally unyielding has passed through and left the world forever changed. Humans had arrived. Humans had acted, and humans had left. The fleet entered orbit over the Tricharax system, where 3 previously warring factions had been locked in decades of conflict. The council chambers of each species were filled with nervous representatives. They had sent desperate, fragmented messages, pleas for intervention, queries about human motives, rumors of their past actions. None of the delegates expected the full scope of what they were about to witness. Admiral Elias Roarke stood on the observation deck of the Resolute, eyes scanning the battle-scarred planets below. He did not smile. He did not gesture. He only observed. This will be different, Dr. Mara Ven whispered beside him. The galaxy is anticipating us now. Sokol's mandibles flexed nervously. They fear what they do not fully understand, and now they know we respond with inevitability. Roarke exhaled slowly. Then, we must be precise. Always precise. The Tricorax system bore the scars of countless wars. Cities leveled, starports destroyed, populations fragmented. Ships floated aimlessly in orbit, remnants of fleets that had once waged war with honor, brutality, and pride. Humans did not land immediately. They first surveyed, calculated, assessed risk, and prioritized life. Every sensor feed, every tactical calculation, every life-saving plan was reviewed with surgical precision. Ven observed the civilians' reaction from below. They watch, terrified and hopeful at the same time. She said, "They have seen humans destroy, without malice, and yet they tremble at the thought." Sackle added softly, "They do not understand that restraint is also a weapon no one dares challenge." Human teams deployed in orbit, below in the cities, and across devastated sectors. Civilians were lifted from crumbling habitats. Medical units stabilized injuries beyond what alien technology could manage. Engineers neutralized automated turrets and malfunctioning orbital defense systems. A young Tricorax child, rescued from a collapsing tower, stared wide-eyed at her human savior. You are like gods," she whispered. The mimetic crouched beside her. "No," he said softly. "We are just people who will not let you die when we can prevent it." Ven noted the child's wide eyes and trembling hands. "They equate capability with divinity," she whispered to Roarke. Rourke's gaze remained on the observation feed. "And sometimes, to survive, the galaxy needs something larger than themselves to trust. We provide that not because we want worship, but because it is necessary." Sokol tilted her head. Trust born of necessity, and fear, both tightly bound together. Not all factions were ready to surrender. Some warlords attempted defiance, rallying their last fleets and automated defense systems. Captain Jonah Hale led a precision strike, disabling weapons and shielding systems, while leaving combatants alive wherever possible. "Every life matters," he reminded his teams. "Neutralize threats, protect innocents, and leave the rest alive. They must learn restraint through example." The warlords' eyes widened as their strongest weapons were rendered harmless, without a single life lost among civilians. One commander shouted in disbelief, "Why spare us?" Hale's voice was calm, unshakable. "Because restraint is stronger than destruction, and because survival is the first lesson you must learn." Sokol whispered to Ven, "They're teaching morality through power, terrifying and elegant." Dr. Ven watched as Atlas ran simulations across the entire system, predicting outcomes of every intervention. Each human action was deliberate. Save lives, neutralize threats, prevent total annihilation. Every operation left behind minimal collateral damage. Every strike carried intention. And yet, the psychological effect was immense. The galaxy began to fear humans, not for their ability to destroy, but for their ability to choose not to destroy. Then whispered to Roarke, "They will remember this. Generations will shape strategy, policy, even morality around humans' restraint." Rourke's expression was neutral. It ensures survival. And in the end, survival is the only metric that matters, Sokol added. And yet fear remains. Fear that you might not always restrain yourself. Holt, now leading the diplomatic team, convened with Tricorax leaders. "You requested aid," she said. "We have arrived. You have been saved, and you have been spared for the sake of survival." Counselor Zine, who had once mocked human diplomacy, now bowed slightly in acknowledgement. "You do not fight to win. You fight to teach restraint, and we understand the lesson." Holt's lips curved faintly. "Do not mistake our restraint for weakness. It is a choice, not a limit. When the galaxy calls, we respond. Always, and always decisively." The counselors shuddered. Every delegate knew the implications. Humanity could end wars in an instant, but they did so sparingly. Their restraint became the standard by which survival would now be measured. As the fleet prepared to depart, civilians and counselors watched in silent awe. No speeches, no celebrations, only the quiet presence of humans leaving the system intact, survivors safe, and warlords humbled. Ven turned to Roarke. "Do they truly understand what you are?" Rourke's gaze met the stars. "They understand enough to survive, and that is all that matters." Sackel's voice was quiet. "The galaxy will respect you, and fear you, in equal measure," Good Roarke said. "Fear ensures caution. Respect ensures cooperation. Both are tools, both are necessary, and both are part of survival." As human ships folded silently into subspace, Ven reflected on the journey. Every planet saved, every fleet neutralized, Every civilian rescued carried emotional weight. Humanity had not conquered, nor had they ruled. They had intervened with surgical precision, leaving only life intact. And yet, the psychological impact stretched further. Across the galaxy, beings whispered of humans' restraint. Histories would recount this intervention. Fear and hope intertwined. Civilizations would debate, plot, and adapt based on lessons learned and from weapons fired. But from weapons unfired, Sokol added softly, "You are terrifying not because you destroy, but because you choose when not to." Ven nodded. Mercy and power, entwined. That is humanity's legacy. Roarke stood on the observation deck, staring into the infinite void. "Will they ever understand?" Ven asked. "No," he said quietly. "They will understand enough to survive. That is enough." The stars shimmered. Across trillions of miles, alien civilizations would tell stories of humans, terrifying in restraint, merciful in action, absolute in consequence. And in that quiet, unspoken certainty, the galaxy shifted. Not because humans ruled, not because humans conquered, but because humans arrived. And when they did, survival itself was guaranteed. The fleet disappeared, leaving only memory, fear, and a fragile hope in its wake. A galaxy forever changed by the legacy of silence and certainty.